Everyone, the day has finally come. Squid Game, the challenge has aired, and I'm going to make some videos reviewing it. I was really excited for this. I know there's been some controversy whether it was tacky of Netflix to do this, make Squid Game into a reality show, but I was really excited to see it become this reality show because I really wanted to see what changes they would make due to the fact that now we're playing with real people and you can't actually, like, you're not actually going to kill anyone, but also due to the fact that a lot of the shock when it came to the contestants in the Squid Game show was that they didn't know what was coming. So, how do you still bring that kind of surprise and shock to contestants when Squid Game, the actual show, was a whole phenomenon before these contestants took part in Squid Game, the challenge, the reality show? I've only watched the first two episodes as I'm recording this video, so everything I say will be based off that. Then I'll do the next two and the next two. We can just get started jumping in right to how the first episode unfolds. So what I thought was really interesting off the bat was how quickly they jumped into the first red light, green light game. We did get like a few interviews and people's, ideas and small pieces of background of people here and there, but for the most part they jumped right into the game, and I do get it. I mean, starting with 456 people, you're not gonna take time getting to know every single person in the show, all 456. That first game is gonna wipe out at least half of the contestants, so it was very smart that they just jumped right in. But due to my understanding of that, it was really shocking that there were some characters that we did get to know, and we did learn the backstory of a bit, who immediately died. Of course, I'm specifically talking about, I forget what number she was, but there was a lady who was talking about, it being her dream to be able to pay off her house or her car or whatever. And I really was like, okay, this is definitely somebody they're about to follow. But then she dies and she gets out almost immediately. And I was like, oh, okay, so they're not going to make this super obvious, which I think is a good thing. Other than that, there wasn't really much during the game. I mean, we got, two stories about two people who were pairs or knew each other going in. There was the mom and son duo. I think it's 302 and 301. So we hear a little bit about how, they're in this as a duo, and that's really helpful strategically because they have one person they can trust. And then we had some dude with a mullet. I think he was 243, and his friend, they're also friends. Another instance where I thought it was really shocking that the friend kind of just dies. He gets out as well, and then so it's just like, oh, okay, that's not a story we're gonna follow. But I don't know how I actually feel about there being multiple people who are coming in knowing each other. Those are the only two we know so far that know each other, but I know we had Haesu and Gi-hoon. They got into the Squid Game in the show knowing each other, and that boded pretty well for them in terms of having somebody they can trust. But I don't know. I feel like maybe it gives people a bit of an unfair advantage, but I guess it really depends on what kind of game you're playing, whether having somebody that is important, because it could also work against you in the sense now you have somebody you feel responsible for, so you might play in a different way, where you have to worry about your own safety and somebody else's safety than if you were playing in a way where you only are concerned about yourself. So there's that, and I think that matters more in like a mom and son duo than it would in like a two best friends duo. But I just thought that was really interesting. I feel like they're trying to make the mom and son really sentimental. I don't know if I care that much, if I'm being honest, but we'll see as the episodes go on. Two things were really interesting. At one point, I noticed that people were getting on the floor, and then when the green light, red light doll turned around, they would get up and run. And I was like, wait, aren't those people down? And I realized that I think it was a strat to like just plant yourself on the ground when the doll turns around and faces the contestants during red light. And I just thought that was an interesting strat, because I was like, would that make it easier to stay steady? Because I think the motion of getting all the way down to the ground, there's a lot of room for error there. But I don't know how many people use that technique and made it. I just thought that was really interesting. I also thought it was quite interesting the mechanism they use to essentially shoot people when they're out. Obviously, it's going to get a lot of comparison to what Mr. Beast did with his recreation of Squid Game, which I'll say the Mr. Beast one looked kind of cooler, but I get they didn't want it maybe to be super explosive. And the ink is like a good indication of, okay, this person was hit. But my whole point is that it seemed like a lot of people, when their ink thingy burst and indicating that they got out, they were kind of surprised, which like led me to also be kind of confused, because towards the end they started showing from the doll's perspective like the motion sensor of like who was moving after the doll turned around, so it made it pretty obvious who was out. But there would be instances where they would just show a close-up after the doll has turned around in its red light of the person's ink patch thingy exploding and getting out, and they kind of looked confused, and it kind of gave off the vibe that they were like randomly exploding people's ink patches and eliminating them, not because they moved, but because they just decided, or maybe there was something off with the system being used to determine if somebody was out or not. So maybe like earlier on doing a better job of like indicating or using that motion sensor thingy perspective from the beginning would have been really helpful, because I was really confused at that point. And then there was this really that funny part where that girl, she freezes on red light in a squat position, and she's like, why did I squat? Why did I squat? And I was just like, that's so true. Why did you squat? I was very confused. But seeing her not only just give up, but then like cry, I was really surprised how intense it is so early on. Obviously, it's a huge cash prize, and it doesn't have the same stakes as the reality show. I mean, the Netflix original show, obviously, because nobody's dying. But the fact that this already has the contestants on edge, that they're crying during the first game, is really wild to me. Other than that, it was a cool recreation. That game was like the quickest and the most straightforward, I think. So we didn't get any big moments like when Ali grabbed Kyun by the jacket and caught him from falling. Like, we didn't have any moments like that, but it was pretty cool. So after that, we get into the sleeping dormitory room, which again, I think it's really cool that they recreated it. And it's just so funny juxtapositioning how the characters in the original story versus the contestants in this reality show are, because obviously they're like, oh my god, this is so awesome. And like when you had the scene where they talked about how many players were eliminated and the money falls down, everyone was like screaming and jumping for joy, as opposed to like the characters in the show being terrified, which I just think is another funny comparison about how, like, you know, this is just so very different from the vibe of the show, and rightfully so, obviously, because you're not going to kill anybody. That's insane. But I thought this was pretty cool, just like getting to know more people and specifically hearing people's strategies for surviving. Obviously there was a social aspect in the original show, but like people were being terrified for their lives, so it's a bit different. But this is very much reminding me of Big Brother, where playing a social game is just as important as being able to win comps and stuff. So people talking about, oh, I'm gonna get to know each other, I'm gonna, you know, people see me as a certain way and they might think I'm weak because I'm older or I'm smaller, so I'm gonna play that up. Seeing how and hearing how people were going to socially try to get by was really, really cool. After the first game, they get all the way down to 197 contestants, which means 259 people were eliminated. So yeah, that first game, just like in the show, wiped out a lot of people. There's no surprise there. But one thing that I thought was really interesting is during this time, they talk about how you can get eliminated through games, through losing games, just like the show, but they'll also give opportunities throughout the competition for people to either eliminate a contestant or get an advantage. So I thought that was really smart, because obviously in the original show, one of the ways that contestants were eliminated is during in between games, there was like a riot that broke out. People were like just killed between games actually happening. And obviously they can't recreate that. So this was an interesting way to be able to kind of keep that same ability to eliminate people between games without it being obviously violent. And also it makes playing a social game that much important, because you can dominate the comps all you want in this case, but if somebody doesn't like you, if you rub somebody the wrong way, if they see you too much of a threat, they can just eliminate you through one of these challenges if they get the chance, which is really smart. So it makes people have to play a more strategic social game, which I thought was really, really cool. I also think that the aspect, once again, it reminds me very much of Big Brother, that they kind of have to take care of the dormitory and themselves as they play in this competition. So we see that they're giving cleaning tasks, they're giving cooking tasks, another way to have people butt heads, for people to bond, and once again, stimulating that social game aspect of the show. During one of the cooking tasks, 2 of the players are given the first opportunity to either give somebody an advantage or eliminate them. So we get players 101 and 134, and they already kind of have people they're looking at. We have 200 who they are kind of on to because, you know, he's trying to play the let me get to know everyone, let me be likable, let me introduce myself, let me be so likable that everyone's good for me, that they don't want to like send me home. And that kind of works against him. Again, I think this whole secret anonymous, because we learned that you get to do this anonymously. You get to anonymously eliminate somebody or anonymously give an advantage to somebody else, which I also want to talk about, because I think that's also interesting that you can't get an advantage for yourself. You have to give it to somebody else. But anyway, I think they pinpoint player 200 and then 432, who has been kind of like very loud, very athletic, very outspoken, and while he's been able to kind of make a crew of jocks, he's also been rubbing people the wrong way. So they kind of like, you know, go back and forth on that. But I did want to get into those two things. So you can eliminate somebody and then you can give somebody else an advantage, and I was thinking which one I would do if I was in the game and I was given the choice. So right off the bat, I think the easy, especially early on, maybe the easy choice would be to eliminate somebody, because that is like the obvious, okay, we have one less person that I have to beat in this game. And that's why I think it's so interesting that they decided to have it that you give the advantage to somebody else as opposed to just give yourself an advantage. Because I think it would be kind of a no-brainer to choose give yourself the advantage, because it's like something you automatically get versus helping somebody else along. But I think it's, again, in order to like make the choice harder, but then also stimulate creating like bonds and relationships, because for you to benefit from that person getting an advantage, you would have to be closely aligned with them. They would have to like want to help you or something like that. I'm assuming, again, I've only watched the first 2 episodes so far, these advantages might be like something that somebody gets but could potentially share. But I do think eliminating somebody is a bit of a waste unless you directly have beef with them, because we just saw in that first game, 259 people were eliminated. The one person you pick off due to using your advantage to eliminate one person is so negligible. Like, it's never going to mean that much until you're really down to like 4 or 5 people. So I feel like taking the advantage, and then you know who got the advantage, immediately warm up to them. You know, either tell them, hey, I gave you the advantage, so whenever that kicks in, just know you got it because of me, so make sure you break me off a piece. Or you don't even have to tell them, just kind of stick by their side, you know, maybe warm up to them organically, maybe just stick by their side during a competition, because you don't know how the advantage they get is going to be administered. So maybe anyone in the vicinity of them will benefit from them getting an advantage. So they end up eliminating somebody, but, and again, I know that this is under a lot of pressure. They were probably the first ones to even get this and get a chance to decide, so it's hard to know how to use it. But I was like, nah, I think being able to eliminate somebody is like, not a red herring, but it's just like, it's not as useful as you think it is. So yeah, again, with the social game, we see a lot of interesting things and how people are starting to turn others off with the smallest things. We have 432 and his pack of bros that are already rubbing people the wrong way. And then we have this really funny scene where a player, I know his name's Lorenzo, but I actually don't think I wrote down his number. They're getting in line and getting their food, and he gets multiple servings. I think he goes back for seconds and then he starts eating off of other people's plate because he was like, this food is not sufficient. And I thought, let me talk about how I thought it was so funny that he was like, I thought we were gonna get like Italian cuisine and pizza. I was like, no, you are, please. But yeah, and so other players see that and they're like, oh my god, so greedy. Now I think this is like a really good one-to-one what happened in the actual show. I think it was Toksu who like got multiple helpings, and if I remember correctly, because he got more than one helping, there wasn't enough food for everyone, so somebody went without food. Obviously they cannot legally not feed somebody, so it's not the same repercussions, but it's just so interesting how the littlest things, him having multiple servings, can rub people the wrong way and all of a sudden potentially put a target on your back. Because again, when you're given the opportunity to either eliminate somebody or give an advantage, when it comes to eliminating, it's going to be the people who stand out and you actually remember that you can even consider eliminating. Because if it's somebody who's fading into the back that you can't even place a number to, or you don't remember at all, they won't be on your radar to eliminate. So it's just really interesting how this social game is folding out and how the littlest things can put you in somebody's bad graces. Then we get the news that somebody is being eliminated. First of all, love how they laid it all out, how it was just in front of everyone, the announcement, and then they even had it kind of set up where the numbers of the 456 players was just like spinning, and then they would stop slowly until they showed the number that was eliminated. I thought the acting from 101 and 134 was really funny. Like, I was like, what do you do though? It's like, it could be anyone. There's still a lot of people left, but it's like you don't want to act too suspicious. And I thought it was pretty interesting because I think people actually sniped 101 for his acting and like felt that he came off weird when the whole thing was going down. But ultimately, we do get it revealed that 200 is eliminated. Obviously 101 and 134 already know this, but it's like a shock to everyone. Even a lot of people are saying like, what did he do? I'm pretty sure one of the contestants was like, oh yeah, he came up, he was really personable, he introduced himself. So it was really confusing to everyone why he would be eliminated. I would hate to go out like that. I'll just say, I would really hate to go out like that, because it's like, if you're killing it in the games, if you think you're being friendly and because of that have the ability to build alliances, now you have to kind of have that added, okay, I don't want to stand out too much. I don't want to be too personable and too likable. I don't want to be too good at the games because then I become a threat. It just makes the game that much harder, but I like it. And I think it's good because it stops it from just being a steamroll by people who are just really good at the games. It's like if you're too good or you're too much of a threat, you can get knocked out of here too, which I just kind of evens the playing field, I guess. So this was probably the peak of the end of episode 1 for me. We get into the next game and the players are basically put in this room where they're asked to separate in one of 4 lines. So it's completely random. Nobody actually knows. There was some discussion amongst the contestants about whether the cookie game was actually going to be next, whether they switched up the order, which was one of the things I was concerned about. If it's played exactly in the way that the Squid Game show was played, I think that gives the contestants too much knowledge of what is going on, which would kind of kill some of the fun. In the actual show, when they chose a shape, nobody knew what the shapes were for ahead of the cookie game. So when you got the umbrella, you realized you screwed yourself over, but there was like no way that you could know that that was going to put you at a disadvantage. In this case, if you do the same thing, well, everyone knows that you're screwed if you get the umbrella versus if you choose something like the triangle or the circle. So I was definitely curious as to how they were going to play that, and I thought that this was so genius. Oh my god, it was so good. I was so gagged. So immediately when they're in their room, those 4 lines, I do not relate it to the cookie game at all. Like, I think, oh, they must be switching up the games. I noticed noticed in the trailer that there were some games there that did not coincide with the games that were being played in the show. So I was like, okay, maybe they completely switched it up altogether and it's a different game, or it's a different, like whether it's a game they never played in the original, or they're just switching an order or something like that. So when they got on those 4 lines, I had no strat. I was like, I don't know if it's advantageous to be first. I always would go for the middle because I'm just like, you just never know. I don't know if it would be advantageous to be last. So yeah, they all separate into 4 lines. They take the first contestant of each line, and then they bring them in to the iconic, cookie room with the 4 shapes on the wall. And still I'm at a loss as to what they're supposed to be doing here. I'm like, are we only seeing 4 people play at a time? And then they announce that each of them will have to decide on one shape, and that will be the shape for everyone in the line that they're in. And I was just like, this is so good. This is so good. Like, not only does it add another way for people to be eliminated, well, let me get to it, but not only does it add another way for people to butt heads, but now everyone who's in that other room in the lines, they're seeing what's going on. So they're seeing exactly how you're maneuvering, behaving, whether you're fighting to get a good shape. Obviously, the triangle and the circle are way more are way easier shapes. So a lot of people are gunning for those versus the umbrella or the star, where they're much more difficult, so it's easy to crack. So this whole element of them having to come to the decision, and I think it's really awesome how the first group of people that had to go through this trial, I don't think they knew that if they weren't able to come to a decision as to which line was going to do what shape by the end of 2 minutes, they had 2 minutes to decide, I don't know if they knew they were going to die or they were going to be eliminated if they failed to come to a decision. And I think that's great if they didn't. That's so cool if they didn't know that was the repercussions of it. I mean, I feel like I would have surmised, I feel like something bad is going to happen if we come to a decision. But as you can probably guess, it's such a mixture, because it's you don't want to screw yourself over by picking the umbrella. But even above that, you're now not only screwing yourself over and putting yourself as a disadvantage by getting the umbrella, now have a line of people who are going to be pissed at you because your decision, your ability, your lack of ability to negotiate, your lack of ability to stand your ground, resulted in them also now being at a disadvantage. So I feel like this was such an interesting, cool twist and such a cool way to put a spin on the game so people couldn't hack it by just knowing, oh, pick the triangle and you're Gucci or whatever. But I also find it really interesting because obviously if you're unable to come to a decision, i.e., nobody folds and takes the umbrella, everyone there gets eliminated. So I was really sitting there and thinking, how mad can you really be at the person who's up making the decision for folding and choosing the umbrella when it's either they put their ability to advance at all in the game on the line in order for you to get a more advantageous chance at advancing. So basically what I mean by that is, if they just fold and choose the umbrella, you and your line now get the umbrella, which sucks. It puts you at a disadvantage, but everyone there at least gets a chance to advance. If they fold and don't choose the umbrella and thus give your line a chance at having the circle or the triangle, well, they just totally nuke their chances of winning at all versus going into a challenge where they're disadvantaged, but there's still a chance they could, actually be able to complete the umbrella. So as much as it would be frustrating, it's I'm asking somebody to give up their shot to advance at all just so I get a better chance at advancing. So yes, I can understand being mad in the moment, but I feel like a prolonged madness is not really reasonable. That's where episode 1 ends, and what a cliffhanger that was. I was out of my seat. I think so far this is very, very interesting, and I'm excited to watch the rest of the series. Let me know down below your thoughts on episode 1, any contestants you're rooting for, any plays or game strategy that stood out to you, and I'll see you in episode 2.